History Month. Happy Transit Equity Day. It is a day that we pay reverence to Rosa Parks, who was instrumental in the Montgomery bus boycotts and advocating for fair and equitable transit. And I just always want us to remember that we stand on the shoulders of those who've come before us, and we always are making history in the rooms that we are presently in. With that, I will start the Operational Planning and Infrastructure Committee meeting at 9:05. Teresa, roll call, please.
Ms. Welch.
Here.
Mr. Love and Mr. Sleesman.
Here.
You have 2 committee members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We will start off our presentations today with an IFB procurement, a presentation of a competitive procurement for track improvements to the Brook Park Rail Yard. We have our 2 presenters today, Kathleen McGurvey and Jonathan Lawley. You have the floor. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Chair Welch, members of the committee, and members of the board. I'm Kathleen McGurvey, Engineering Project Manager for Track, here with Jonathan Lawley to discuss the Brook Park Yard track improvements. The purpose of this project is to prepare for the new rail cars, which will be commissioned out of the Brook Park shop, so we need to do some upgrades in the yard, and this project that follows will also be related to the rail car commissioning. So there'll be no service impact related to this project. It's located all in the yard, except we are doing some feeders, and when we do those feeders, we may need a weekend shutdown. So here is an aerial view of the shop building and the tracks related to it. Kind of up and to the right is east, and down and to the left is Railroad West. The tracks that we are working on are tracks 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 11, and track 5 is closest to the revenue tracks. Track 10 and 11 enter through the shop doors. What we'll be doing is replacing marked ties on tracks 5, 6, and 7, and reconstructing portions of all of track 8 and portions of tracks 10 and 11. We'll be surfacing and lining all of the tracks that we are touching in this project. We'll also be replacing switch stands, rods, latches, and targets on the switch stands. And we're going to be doing some electrical stuff, including negative returns and feeders, and then track bonding for power. And now I'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Good morning, Chairperson Walsh, members of the board, members of the committee. Jonathan Lawley, Program Contract Manager. The invitation for bid was issued November 18th, 2024. 12 interested parties, including subcontractors, reviewed the solicitation. 2 firms submitted a bid for this project. The lowest responsible bidder was Railworks Track Services, LLC. They'll be using Cook Paving and Construction Incorporated and William G. Moore & Son Incorporated of Delaware to fulfill the 17% DBE participation goal as assigned to this project. Railworks Track Services, LLC has successfully completed projects here for the RTA, Amtrak, Michigan Department of Transportation, and MTA Maryland, among many others. The staff is requesting this committee recommend award to Railworks Track Services, LLC for the Brook Park Yard Tracks Improvements Project in a contract amount not to exceed $2,589,826. At this time, we'll be happy to entertain questions.
Thank you. Do I have questions from the committee or board overall? Okay, I have a motion to move this forward. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This carries. Thank you so much. We will continue the IFB procurement presentations with the facility improvements for the Brook Park Rail Shop. For this, we will have presenters Matt Marotta. Please correct me if that is incorrect. And Jonathan Lawley up again.
Good morning, Chair
Good morning.
Welch, members of the board and committee. My name is Matthew Marotta. I'm in the engineering department, resident architect. I'm happy to be here with you today to present the facility improvements for our Brook Park Rail Shop modifications. Here is an aerial view of the Brook Park site that Kathleen kind of went over too. So this kind of piggybacks on that project. This project is focused on the actual existing rail shop facility building. So there's going to be modifications within that. The primary purpose of this project is, GCRT plans to utilize the existing Brook Park shop to commission a new rail car fleet. So this is a very integral project. The existing building and site requires modifications and improvements prior to taking delivery of the rail cars. Some of the primary construction scope for this project is track 10 and 11 is to replace the rail track system throughout the building. Also on track 10 and 11, install the fall protection system above the train car roofs. Track 10 is extend the fall protection system along the maintenance pit. And track 10 also to modify and replace the catenary wire system and the coiling doors at the exterior of the buildings in order to bring the new trains in and out. Track 11, also install electrical systems for the rail car maintenance and portable jack system. That's part of the commissioning. And our existing mezzanine level in the shop, we have to modify the floor plate system to access the roof and all the equipment on top of the new train cars. Also, we have to modify the existing train trolley system within the shop. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Lawley.
Good morning again. The invitation for bid for this project was issued on December 9th, 2024. 19 interested parties, including subcontractors, reviewed this solicitation. 4 firms submitted a bid for this project. The lowest responsive and responsible vendor for this project was Standard Contracting Engineering Incorporated. There is a 19% DB participation goal assigned to this project. Standard Contracting and Engineering Incorporated completed the good faith effort process, which was reviewed and approved by the Office of Business Development. Standard Contracting and Engineering Incorporated has successfully completed projects for Nestle, Ford, General Motors, Lubrizol, GCRTA, among others. The staff is requesting this committee recommend award to Standard Contracting and Engineering Incorporated for this project in a contract amount not to exceed $2,893,100. We'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee or Board of? Okay. I motion to move this forward. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. Thank you. I now motion to adjourn the Operational Planning and Infrastructure Committee meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. We will now adjourn that meeting. I forgot to mention that it's Rosa Parks' birthday. Thanks to Trustee Elder for reminding me of that. I'm now going to open up the Organizational Services and Performance Monitoring Committee at 9:13. Teresa, roll call.
Mayor Biassiata, Ms. Welch,
Here.
Ms. McPherson, Ms. Pachetti, and Mr. Sleesman.
Here.
You have 3 committee members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We have at least 5 items on the agenda today. We're going to start off with a non-competitive procurement presentation about procurement for the maintenance and support of the authority's bid dispatch, the operating self-service and schedule software system. Up for this presentation, we have Tanya Campbell and then Sean Becker. You now have the floor.
Good morning, Chair Welch, committee members, and members of the board. My name is Tonina Campbell, and I am the ITS manager for the HASTA software system. The procurement contract administrator is Sean Becker. I will be presenting on the HASTA's maintenance and support 3-year renewal agreement with Giroux and Company. This will be a 3-year renewal of GCRTA's HASTA's maintenance and support agreement with Giroux and Company for the years 2025 through 2027. We currently use 16 HASTA's products. Support agreement covers all of them. The agreement guarantees 24/7 emergency support, timely resolution of software issues, on-site vendor training, software customization, and software upgrades. GCRTA has used the HASTA's module for over 20 years for scheduling, run cutting, schedule analysis, employee performance management, and daily dispatching for GCRTA's bus and rail operators. This is a mission-critical software that allows GCRTA to develop service schedules, plan service changes, and pay operators in accordance with the ATU contract. The software is proprietary and is supported and maintained exclusively by Giroux. This is our HASTA system, and at this time, Sean Becker will go over the procurement.
Thanks, Tonita. Good morning, Chairperson Welch, committee members, and members of the board. My name is Sean Becker, Program Contract Manager in the Procurement Office, and historically responsible for this contract. So this is a non-competitive purchase with Giroux, Inc., and per revised code section 306.43H. Giroux is the developer and original provider of that software, and it's proprietary in nature. So procurement requested a proposal on November 21st, 2024. That proposal was received on December 3rd, and that proposal was reviewed by representatives from IT and procurement. And there was a 0% DBE goal associated to this project, given the proprietary nature. So Giroux's experience. They have over 40 years of experience in the transit industry. They have in-depth knowledge of public transportation challenges, the integration of best practices worldwide. They're heavily invested in research and development, and they utilize the problems that their clients have and the solutions that they develop to spread across their client base. So there's a co-innovation. Giroux's clients include GCRTA, Metro Transit, King County Metro, MTA, CTA, Metro, Port Authority of Allegheny County, among many others. And this graph shows a year-over-year cost for this software. So this 3-year contract starts in 2025. 2024 is included for reference. So that's the final year of the current contract, and it's approximately a 5% increase year over year. And the recommendation, staff requests that the Organizational Services and Performance Monitoring Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees the award for HASTIS software maintenance and support services to Giroux, Inc. in a total contract amount not to exceed $1,089,936 for a 3-year period. And this amount is approximately 1% below the independent cost estimate developed by the project office. And at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. Any questions?
Did the previous contract have a similar percentage increase every year?
Yeah, it's very synonymous with the historic 3-year, 5% year-over-year increase. So the only time it kind of changes if we add additional modules, so that cost kind of goes up a little bit then. So
Thanks.
Okay. Any additional questions? Do I have a motion to move this forward?
So moved. So moved.
All right. Second, Welch. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. Thank you.
thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have a proposed agreement with the City of Shaker Heights for landscaping maintenance and parking lot snow removal. That's always great. For this presentation, we'll have Jim Reed, Property Manager, for the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Welch, members of the committee. My name is Jim Reed. I'm the Property Manager here at RTA. I'm here to discuss a resolution authorizing an agreement with the City of Shaker Heights for landscape maintenance and parking lot snow removal for a period of 1 year beginning January 1, 2025, in the amount of $320,064.55. By way of background, this has been a successful arrangement with the City of Shaker Heights since 1983. Shaker Heights is technically the authority's contractor for such services. This covers all right-of-way and adjacent areas along the green and blue lines within the city. That is the City of Shaker Heights. This arrangement has been reviewed extensively, and the consensus is that the authority receives fair value in services under this arrangement. The highlights of this agreement are as follows. We're looking at a 1-year term beginning in January 1st and ending December 31st. The cost will not exceed $320,064.55. Within that, we have $282,170 of regularly scheduled maintenance along the rights of way, and that's an increase of about $10,000 over the 2024 expense. We also have provision for a one-time installation of some new landscaping related to the authority's Shaker Boulevard Shelter Project, and that's a cost not to exceed $37,895. So we got a total of $320,064.55. Staff requests that the committee recommend approval of the agreement with the City of Shaker Heights for the provision of labor and materials for all landscape maintenance for the one-year term at a cost of $320,064.55. Any questions?
Thank you for that. Questions? I will motion to move this forward. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. Thank you so much. We now have the next agenda item, a presentation of the competitive negotiated contract options for the purchase of 6 new Flyers 60 feet articulated BRT coaches. Presenters today, we have Dan Dietrich and Glenville Manning to do the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson Walsh, members of the committee, members of the board. My name is Dan Dietrich. I'm Director of Fleet Management, and I'm here with Glenville Manning from Procurement to present the exercise of an option under contract number 2020-046 with New Flyer of America Incorporated for the purchase of 6 5-door, 60-foot articulated BRT coaches. RTA operates 60-foot articulated 5-door BRT coaches servicing the Health Line, which carry over 3 times more passengers per mile than any other mode for RTA. 6 additional CNG BRTs will allow for the existing fleet to rotate into a midlife maintenance program while continuing to provide reliable service for the Health Line. Pictured here is the Health Line bus that is currently servicing the Lucas corridor, and this is the bus we'll be purchasing with this contract option. Some notable features, continuing with the passenger information system, contoured plastic seats, 88 passenger stations, tip-in vented windows, 360-degree security cameras, center door ADA access, and of course this will also have a 5G router for customer Wi-Fi. And I'll turn it over to Glenville.
Good morning, Chairperson Welch, committee members, and members of the board. My name is Glenville Manning, Contract Administrator for this purchase option. The Board of Trustees approved resolution number 2020-61 on August 25th, 2020, authorizing contract number 2020-046 with New Flyer of America Incorporated for the manufacture and delivery of up to 7 5-door 60-foot articulated BRT coaches, spare parts, tooling, and training in an amount not to exceed $7,154,341.63, with options to procure up to 21 additional coaches, spare parts, tooling, and training to be delivered over the 5-year contract term. There is a critical need to replace additional coaches that have exceeded their useful life. Funding has been identified to procure 6 of the remaining 12 coaches under a contract option. New Flyer Incorporated will have the capacity available to meet GCRTA's production need. To date, the Board of Trustees have approved the purchase of 16 BRT coaches under this contract as follows. On August 25th, 2020, resolution number 2020-061 authorized 7 5-door BRT coaches, spare parts, tooling, and training for a total amount of $7,154,341.63. On March 23rd, 2021, resolution number 2021-021 authorized 9 5-door BRT coaches at a unit price of $971,783.80 for a total amount of $8,746,054.20. Staff requests that the Organizational Services and Performance Monitoring Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees the award of an option for the purchase and delivery of 6 5-door 60-foot articulated BRT coaches in an amount not to exceed $7,956,739.02. Questions? We'll be glad to answer.
Thank you. timeline on receiving these and getting them implemented?
I believe it's an 18 to 24-month lead time for probably more towards 18 months for this bus to be manufactured and delivered.
Trustee Elder.
Good morning. I think I heard you say that the health line has 3 times the amount of riders as compared with other lines, but I think I also heard you mention that there was a need for rotating the buses for maintenance. Is the purpose of the additional buses for maintenance purposes or because of the amount of riders that we have, or both?
Well, the maintenance for these buses, it's almost like 2 buses in one because of the articulated joint and having 3 axles. And so there's a lot of maintenance that goes into these on our normal program. But for something, the service that we provide on the health line, we would want to take some of these buses and put them through a midlife program, body refresh, paint refresh, additional items. So it'll allow those buses to be taken out for an extended period of time without interrupting service for our peak service needs. Doc, do you have something to add?
Good morning, Chairperson Welsh, members of the board, members of the public. I'm Flauncey Cave, the Chief Operating Officer. So yes, we have, what we learned with our last bus purchase of these particular buses is that if you buy all of them at the same time, they're gonna all go down at the same time. And so one of the things that we're protecting against with this order is that we will have the opportunity to make sure that we can move them in and out without having a threat to service. But in addition to that, we are looking at a plan that will allow us to use the excess when they're all back and ready for lines that have a capacity need out of the Hayden garage. And so there will be an opportunity to rebrand some of them that aren't needed on the health line every day for other service. And then the last place is that if we increase frequency on the health line, we would need more buses.
Got it. And then just additional clarifying question, would these additional buses only solely be used for health line, or would we potentially use these on other BRT lines as well?
We would use them on other lines, not particularly that they would be on other BRT lines.
Gotcha. Thank you.
What's roughly the size of the fleet?
There are 16. We have 16 currently.
So this would bring it to 22?
Yes.
And would that facilitate more frequent service on the health line then?
Not exactly. It will give us the potential to do so.
What would be the limiting factor if it weren't the vehicles?
Choice. So what we're looking at, when we think of increasing service and frequency, so now our most frequent lines are 15 minutes. As we think about determining if we're going to increase lines to be under 15, we have to think about the confluence of 2 things. One is frequency and the other is coverage. When we make a currently high frequency line more frequent, we do so at the potential detriment of making a less frequent line more frequent. So if we just, in easy terms, if we have 1 bus, we can make maybe an hourly line half hourly, or we can make a 15-minute line 7.5 minutes. Let's just use that as an example. And so we're moving through that process. When we had our system redesign and met with our community, the community wanted us to balance both of those. And so we made a real strong core frequency network of 15 minutes. And when we have had incremental resources throughout the time since the system redesign, we have sought to increase the frequency, of our less frequent lines.
Okay, I mean, either way, we're 18 months out at least, so we can have this discussion, I guess, later. But given the efficiency of the health line, I would like us to look at that.
Just for clarification, Trustee, what's the request so that I can make sure we have the right response?
Essentially, I'd like the health line to run every 7.5 minutes or whatever makes sense more frequently. It's an extraordinarily efficient line. I think there's potential to have significantly higher ridership as it had prior to 2018 rather. And I think it would be a good use of resources given the efficiency and effectiveness of of that line.
Thank you. Got the information. I will say it's been quite the debate internally, so we'll continue to review. It definitely won't be a snap decision. We've got to make sure that we have the ridership that supports it, but it is on the docket for future evaluation, future not being forever, right? I think we've got to make sure that we can respond to the demand of people that are coming back into downtown. So it's a good thing that we're having a lot of the businesses reopen up. It's a great thing that we're having folks move back into the downtown area. I think it really, and I've kind of mentioned this before, and we definitely will consider all of the aspects, and we hear you loud and clear. The conversation of the chicken or the egg is really what it comes down to in a lot of ways, to be able to think about, do we put the service out there and hope and also campaign for folks to be able to come back? And then it takes a little bit of time for that, or do we wait for the people to come and then respond accordingly that way? So it really also becomes a financial question as far as what the resources are. Do we have the availability? But I think we've got to make sure that we're somewhere in the middle. So we definitely will review that, and there is an internal split as well. So we hear that loud and clear. But at any rate, we have to make sure that the ridership also is there. And I think there's certain indicators throughout the rest of the system that tell us whether or not folks are actually in the downtown area to ride. So there is a lot of that balance going on, but we want to make sure that we take advantage of the resources we have. So I hear you that we don't want to immediately replicate what we promised 20 years ago, but we need to make sure that we build it back up at a quick clip so that we don't waste the resource that we have. One thing, if I could mention as well, I'm going to ask Dan and or Doc to be able to talk about the efficiency of the articulated vehicles in inclement weather. We got a question about how many do we have, and I just want to make sure that we also are aware of what an articulated bus can actually do in a city like Cleveland that has hills sometimes, also has ice, and also has snow. You mentioned the articulated joint, Dan. Sometimes that can get into a locking mechanism when you're on cold weather days like today with some of the ice and that kind of thing. So I just want to make sure that we understand that articulated buses, we will not be at a point where we have 100 of them, right? They are more of a specialty route that can include higher ridership, as was mentioned by Trustee Sleesman. But there's a reason why we have 16 and are going to 22 instead of 50 and are going to 75. So if you could mention that for a moment.
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Ms. Terry. And so our articulated buses, as you can imagine with this accordion-style bus, the bus is being pushed from the back. And so it will have some hard time in grades, so it works best on a flat surface that's moving throughout the community in a flat surface. And so in some terrains and some routes, it won't be an appropriate bus. Just think of several other vehicles that leave out of the East Cleveland garage and have to go up the hill through Cleveland Heights. We probably wouldn't make it up the hill with that bus in most of the inclement winter weather. And so when we think about the other places, we're thinking about the ridership and capacity that's needed on the lines, but we're also thinking about the terrain so that the bus doesn't, a visual, if you can see my hands, the back of the bus will end up pushing and it can make the bus almost jackknife. And so you need the streets to be very clear, and when we don't have that, that bus can have some power problems.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Do I have a motion to move this forward?
So moved. McPherson.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. Thank you for that presentation. Very excited about these. Last, we have a presentation of the reoccurring competitive procurement for ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel for a period of 3 years. For presenters, we have Ryan Fogliano and Glenville Manning to present. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairperson Welch, committee members, and members of the board. My name is Ryan Fogliano. I am the Assistant Supply Chain Manager. I will be presenting on the procurement of ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel. Diesel fuel is required for the operation of the authority's revenue and non-revenue vehicles, which includes bus and non-revenue fleets, work equipment, trucks, and generators. The authority continues to reduce its consumption of diesel fuel as we convert from diesel to CNG vehicles. This contract will seek approval to procure up to 1 million gallons of diesel per year, which includes a contingency quantity in the event of an unanticipated need. Current average pricing for diesel fuel is $2.47 per gallon. Diesel pricing fluctuates based on the average daily sales rate tracked and published by the Oil Information Services, OPIS. OPIS collects refinery pricing, wholesale, and retail fuel prices from various sources to determine daily price changes. Some of those sources are oil companies, fuel terminals, and service stations. The collected data is processed and verified for accuracy and then used by between buyers and sellers as a pricing benchmark. I will now turn it over to Glenville Manning for the procurement overview.
Good morning, Chair Welch, committee members, and members of the board. Glenville Manning, contract administrator for this procurement. The invitation for bid for the furnishing of ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel for a period of 3 years was issued on December 15, 2024. 7 responsive bids were received on January 15, 2025. A summary of those bids is as follows. As you can see here, the values are to the 10,000th decimal place for competitive bidding. Petroleum Traders Corporation, which is headquartered in Fort Wayne, Indiana, was determined to be the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. The authority will procure ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel for a period of 3 years at approximately 1 million gallons per year at a firm basis rate of the OPIS Index average daily rate, delivery minus, which the rates that are shown are what was submitted by the vendors for the bid, which accumulates to around minus 3 cents per gallon for year 1, 2, and just below 3 cents per gallon for year 3. Recent experience include Allen County RTA, Ohio Edison, City of Canton, United States Postal Service of Cleveland. Staff requests that the Organizational Services and Performance Monitoring Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees the award of a contract to Petroleum Traders Corporation for the furnishing of approximately 3 million gallons of ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel as specified and as required for a period of 3 years. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Yes, Mayor Weiss.
Thank you. Just for my own education, the ultra-low sulfur, that's standard. That's the diesel we use generally, historically?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So moved, McPherson.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I motion to adjourn the Organizational Services and Performance Monitoring Committee. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will now adjourn this meeting at 9:38.
I'd like to call to order the Committee of the Whole. Roll call, please.
Mayor Kumar.
Here.
Ms. Welch.
Here.
Mayor Biassiata. Ms. Elder.
Here.
Mr. Love. Reverend Lucas. Ms. McPherson.
Here.
Ms. Pachetti.
Here.
Mr. Sleesman.
Here.
And Mayor Weiss.
Here.
You have 7 committee members present. You have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. We have several items this morning. The first is a rail car replacement program update, and we have Brian Moore and Carolyn Young presenting.
Good morning, Chair Kumar, members of the board. My name is Brian Moore, and I'm the manager for the Rail Car Replacement Program. And I'm here to give an update on the proposed budget revision for the program. Okay, when you take a look at the existing program budget, vehicle acquisition, you can see that on the first line. We're going from $360.5 million to roughly $380.7. So that's a difference of about $20.1 million. I'm going to go through the numbers here, and then after I'm done, I'm going to give an explanation as to how comes they changed. Design, inspection, and testing, that remained the same. It's $6.4 million. The existing infrastructure upgrades, went from 29.7 million to 33.5 million, and that's a difference of about $3.8 million. Project administration remained consistent at $300,000. Force account went from 4 million to 12.7 million for a difference of $8.7 million. And then our unallocated contingency went from a negative value of roughly $8 million to a new $16.3 million total. So that's a difference, a swing from being negative to positive of about $24.3 million. So to sum it up, the program will go from $393 million to $450 million, which is a difference of about $57 million. So looking at the HRV and LRV, which those are the trains, just to replace the trains, we're looking at an increase of $20.1 million. So as we look at that and we break it down, the first 24 vehicles that we issued that were awarded on in June of 2023, the vehicle price was about $5.1 million. The first option that we issued with the 6 vehicles, the price remained the same at $5.1 million because we had a clause in the contract that allowed us to exercise an option within the first 6 months with no escalation. So we took advantage of that. Then when you look at the 18 vehicle option that we exercised just last year, we included estimated escalation of $5.8 million per car. So that takes the unit price of the vehicle from $5.1 million to $5.8. And again, that's an estimated value. And then when we look at the remaining 12 options that we have on that contract, we are making an estimate of those vehicles being at $6 million per vehicle. And then to date, our change orders and potential change orders are around $983,000. So that speaks to the $20 million increase. Then as we look at the rail contract design and project management, it was an increase of $201,000. And what that is it reflects the actual contract with Siemens for those items. And those are the non-reoccurring engineering costs. Spare parts and special tools, we're looking at an $8.1 million increase. We identified additional spare parts and special tools. Siemens came out, took a look at our facility, and then we also had discussions with them, and we had them reach out or give us information on consumable parts so that from other agencies, what parts were consumed so that we could make provisions to get those items in our inventory. And then with the existing infrastructure upgrades, that's the design and construction, there was an increase of about $3.8 million. So now 4 of the 7 packages have contractors, and as you heard earlier today, we're working on getting additional contractors on board, which solidifies our prices. Additional work was identified at the Brook Park Yard. So as we started looking at things, there were items that we needed to repair that weren't originally anticipated. The red line platform estimate, that was prepared before we did a condition study. So engineering went out, they took a look at the platform conditions, and some of the platforms required additional work. And we do have a consultant on board now that's preparing that, the contractor, preparing the design for the platform modifications. Another item, we bought a 100-pound rail, which earlier you heard Matt talk about the interior repairs to the Brook Park facility. We knew that that construction contract was going to be delayed, so we pulled out the long lead item, which is the rail. They only roll it twice a year, so we were able to take advantage of that, and that was $36,400. But we do have the rail on hand. It's at Brook Park Shop, and we're just waiting for the contractor to get on board to use it. And then at the time of the last estimate, the design packages for infrastructure were not advertised. So we did have some increases on some of those contracts. Looking at the force account and administration, an increase of about $8.7 million. At the time, we had not developed the force account plan. Since then, the force account plan has been developed. It's been approved by FTA. And that force account plan not only includes staff time, but it also includes travel costs and things of that nature. Then looking at the contingencies, the unallocated contingencies increased 24.3 million. So that went from a negative contingency value to a positive contingency value. And so that the unallocated contingency will be used for things that we don't know about on the construction side as well as on the vehicle side. And we do now have allocated contingencies for design and construction and for the vehicles. And some of those contingencies are built into the estimate that we're using for future rail car unit price costs. And again, the unallocated contingency will be used for unforeseen conditions that we run into once we start commissioning these vehicles.
Brian, I think when we went over the slides the other day, in that initial set of numbers, that unallocated contingency was actually a negative amount.
Yes.
And that had moved over time, and as cost had increased, to balance out the approved budget as a snapshot for your purposes, that had to be a negative, knowing that we had to come back and revise the budget now that we had known costs.
That's correct.
So it's sort of an oddity, but it was a snapshot of a moment in time. Had you gone back further, you would have seen different sets of numbers as they develop, but we had to reconcile for Raj to make him happy that we were within our budget.
That's correct. We use that as kind of a balancing or an offsetting category. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn so she can discuss funding.
Good morning, Mayor Kumar, officers of the board. My name is Carolyn Young. I am the Director in Grants Management and Treasury. What you have before you is the revised budget. We're looking to revise the current budget of $393 million to $450 million, which is a $57 million increase in budget. Making this adjustment will require additional commitments from our funders. So we're expecting to lay out a revised funding outlay and receiving the additional funding of $26 million from our GCRTA rolling stock reserve. If you recall, last year in December, the Office of Management and Budget came before the board laying out a 3-year plan where they're actually showing that there will be a transfer from the general fund to the rolling stock fund totaling $26 million over the next 3 years. Then we're looking at another $5.6 million to be received from federal formula funds. This will be programmed in our upcoming capital program. We'll have additional $20.6 million of ODOT funding. These are competitive grant opportunities that we'll continue to seek. And then we have a $4.8 million that is currently been received by NOACA. So this has already been received, which totals $57 million overall budget. This slide that you see before you right now is a snapshot of funding either awarded, committed, or uncommitted. The award category of funding is defined as funds already reserved or portioned by the grantor or GCRTA rolling stock. The committed category are funds that have been programmed in the capital improvement plan, or the grantor has provided us a letter of intent in supporting the railcar program. The uncommitted category is the category we haven't either received the award or a commitment, and RTA is continuing to seek additional funding, whether it's the rolling stock or other competitive grant opportunities. $5.6 million, as mentioned, will build this in our capital improvement program over the next 5 years for our fiscal 2026 through 2030 capital improvement program. Then there's an additional $33 million that we're seeking with ODOT. We currently have an application in that we submitted back in December. So we're waiting for award notification, and hopefully we'll receive that before the end of first quarter. Through continuous support from our funders, we have been able to raise at least $396.3 million, over the past few years, which is a slightly increase above our current budget of $393 million, leaving an uncommitted balance of $53.6 million. We're expecting those sources to be funded according to what I have just recently outlined for you over the next year or two. So hopefully we'll have the notice from ODOT stating that we have won the award. Hopefully, so that's a big chunk of what we see here. We do not require any action. This is just really for informational purposes. So sometime later this year, before we exercise the next 12 rail cars or 6 rail cars, Office of Management and Budget will come back before the board making an official request to amend the budget. Are there any questions?
Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, and congrats to the team on the continued success on the funding source. If we go back one, I think it's just one slide to, yes, the ODOT CMAQ 33 million. Is that federal funding that comes through the state, or is it state funding?
This would be actually a combination of two. So you have state funding, but CMAQ is actually a flex fund through the federal government.
Okay. And is it possible you get one but not the other, or do you usually get both or none?
We usually get both. Over the past few years, it has been programmed within, especially for buses, we have received CMAQ funding. With the rail car program, we have received additional $29 million, as you see there, has been awarded with the rail car program. So right now, we have a pending commitment of $8.2 million that we're expecting, and now we have a seeking grant application in place for additional $37 million.
Great, thank you. If I may, since I have the floor, if I may ask one other question, and not to beat this topic up, but the contingency, I just want to make sure I understand. It went negative because we used the amount we used more than what we had originally budgeted for contingency, and so we've sort of added to that contingency fund so that we may or may not need. Am I?
So within the budget plan itself, we started off at $393 million. The contingency is really a placeholder for us. So as we begin to spend funding, additional funding, we'll notice that we're going into a deficit and we don't have the sufficient funding to support it. So at this particular point in time, we noticed that we had a negative and we had to come back to the board to adjust our budget. So now we're stipulating another, when you look at it with, we'll go back to Brian's slide here, we're actually looking at a $24 million contingency right now, which is roughly around 5% of the $450 million budget that we're coming before the board eventually to request.
Okay, thank you.
If I can ask a quick question, I'm looking at Raj and I'm looking at Mike. Good question, Mayor. We've had a lot of conversations about contingency and what the right amount would be for a project of this magnitude. It's always a little difficult to be able to guesstimate how much contingency would be needed for the life of the project. But I will say that us coming back, we're making an internal pledge to ourselves, right, not to come back more than 2 or 3 times at absolute maximum to be able to adjust the budget. Contingency is part of that. So if I'm going to ask either Raj or Mike to be able to weigh in, just a really short synopsis of the contingency conversation and how the contingency we've seen being utilized thus far, and then what we project going forward. So maybe, Mike, if you want to talk about the utilization to this point, and then perhaps, Raj, if you want to address the going forward.
Yeah, sure. General Manager, and members of the board. Yeah, as Mayor Weiss had mentioned, as we tracked the budget, particularly when we were in the negotiation for the 18-car option, it became apparent that the escalation clauses in the contract were going to take us over the 393. Now, we did not contract over the 393, but we started looking at that as well as Brian mentioned, the other estimates for the projects that we had in design for the infrastructure category. And as we projected, as of, I think the date on there was August of last year, our projections were showing that we were going to be outside of the 393. I think as a group, we've taken the time to get more defined numbers, particularly on the infrastructure program. And with the way that the option escalation tables work in our contract, we've spent time going back and forth on contingency. We have an unallocated of 16, but in the numbers above that, there's another 10 million that is in the individual line items. So there's about a $26 million contingency right now. It's a little bit over 5% of the total budget of what we're asking for. And a lot of times we carry a 10% contingency on everything, but obviously our highest risk items are contracted already. So we've already got 48 rail cars contracted. You know, we now have 4 of the 7 infrastructure projects contracted. And 2 of the 3 remaining are at 30% design, where we had 30% design estimates. So, you know, could we come to you at 440? But that then the unallocated contingency would be 6 million instead of 16. So we felt that we should be in that 5% range based on the progress to date. You know, even though we ordered the rail cars a long time ago, we haven't built one yet. Even though the frame is under construction, so we do know that there's things that can come up in the manufacturing and certainly in the acceptance testing, and even in our projects. We've been fighting over the last 2 years a lot of volatility in the construction pricing, as you've seen with some of the projects we've brought before you the last couple of years. Some are over budget, some are under budget. There's a lot of volatility there. So I think the team felt that at the 450 level, we have enough unallocated contingency, plus we have another 10 million allocated within the line items. We certainly do not want to come back to the board to ask for any more budget.
No, I think I wanted to highlight board members, India Terry, good morning. This is Raj Gautam. I'm the CFO for the organization. Wanted to jump in, essentially kind of piggyback what Mike was saying, to make sure that when we were developing these budgets, and if you would recall that we had actually sent out a memo in November when we had exercised the 12, that we knew that the original $393 million budget was no longer applicable and needed some revision. We had made a commitment that within the next 6 months we will come back to the board. We feel that we have a very, very conservative plan on the contingency side. I think we're fairly comfortable at this point that between the allocated contingency amounts and the unallocated contingency amounts, that we are there, with the desire not to have to keep on coming back to the board over and over again to make revisions to the overall budget. Strategically, from a spending and commitment standpoint, I think we're going to continue looking to make sure that the grant funds are used first, so any savings go back into the rolling stock fund and remain there.
Thank you both.
Any other questions?
Maybe just one question, Trustee Elder. Do we anticipate any challenges with securing any of those grant funds, particularly the federal ones?
So we did anticipate your question. You'll see the smirk on several of our faces. Raj, if you want to start, and then Carolyn, if you have anything to add.
Start off with saying, are there challenges? Yes, there are obviously always challenges. When the initial memo was released about the freeze in funding, et cetera, of course, that did cause some heartburn overall. Right. And Michael, feel free to chime in at that same time with his thoughts, because I think he is a lot more engaged with the advocacy groups that we have both at the federal and state level. Railcar funding, we feel fairly comfortable. It has been appropriated to a large extent. There are some risks within the different programs. When we reviewed the list of programs, et cetera, that were included in the initial memo that was subsequently rescinded, we continue to obviously watch that and engage not only our advocacy groups, but also to our funders, whether it's FTA or ODOT, to see what, if anything, we need to do right now to make sure that we continue to receive that funding. Mike, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think I did. Actually, if we go back to that funding table, it might be easier. The Rolling Stock Reserve Fund, that's our control. Again, and the formula funds, we actually control that too. Mm-hmm. Now, to find that $5.6 million, that's going to be $5.6 million that we don't spend on another project. But that's what we're working through right now in our update of the rolling 5-year CIP. But we control that. When it comes to the ODOT competitive grant, this is through the Ohio Transit Preservation Partnership Program, OTP2. Yes. And the way this normally works is ODOT has funded us 5 different times, but they can only commit 1 year at a time. So this particular grant round, they asked us for a 2-year projection because they may do 2 years at once. But traditionally, they've been giving us between $8 and $12 million a year for the last 4 or 5 years. And we expect that they will continue to fund us a year at a time. If we're asking for money, we'll just be using the rail car for that ask a couple years longer as opposed to another project. So I would say the risk is relatively low because we're choosing to complete the funding for the rail car as opposed funding some other things in our system. So even the ODOT money, even though they have to award it to us, it's our choice to ask them for more, and that means that's other projects we're not going to ask them for, until we get the rail car done. I did want to clarify on the ODOT funding, Mayor Weiss, STBG, the surface, the STBG, and we're not getting CMAQ funding, we're getting carbon reduction funding. So CRP are the 2 funding sources. In the one line, the ODOT General Revenue Fund, which is 100% local, was the first thing they gave us a long time ago, and we used that for local match. We do not expect we'll ever get any more GRF funds. So we will be getting STBG, our CRP funds, which are federal funds that are given to the state, and the state chooses to allocate them through a competitive process. And that's part of the ODOT transit budget.
Any final questions from the board? Any other comments from management? Assuming you would like a motion to move this to the full board?
No motion,
Nothing?
no action is needed.
Okay, great. Next, we have Downtown Cleveland Improvement District. And we have Jim Reed presenting.
Mayor Kumar, members of the committee, my name is Jim Reed, property manager here at RTA. I'm here to, wait a minute, we've got to get to our slide. We're here today to talk about the renewal of the authority's participation in the Downtown Cleveland Improvement District for the term 2026 through 2032. Under the Ohio Revised Code, property owners in a geographic location may create a special improvement district, assess themselves, and to provide for the cost of services within that district. The authority initially joined the Downtown Cleveland Improvement District in 2025 pursuant to a board resolution. The Board of Trustees again approved a renewal of that petition in 2009 and again in 2015.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Currently, I'm sorry.
Sorry, could you just clarify when we first entered into the, I don't know, this partnership?
2005, as far as I know.
Thank you.
Currently, the Downtown Cleveland Improvement Corporation is proposing a new assessment. They've adjusted the geographical area slightly. RTA owns 17 parcels within the district, and we've been asked to execute the petition to approve. Now, the question is, what do we get for this expenditure? Downtown Cleveland has started its Clean and Safe initiative, emphasizing services of the safety ambassadors, services to unhoused persons, security, particularly around Public Square, graffiti removal, collection of trash, litter, and waste, public realm improvements, and management of Public Square, which DCI recently took over from the city. What is our cost? For these services, we are currently assessed $37,800 approximately. That will go to $40,272 in 2026, increasing approximately 2.35% per year over the 7-year term, and we'll end up at $46,295 in 2032. Staff requests the Committee of the Whole to recommend approval of the petition to renew the Downtown Cleveland Improvement District for the 7-year term at a cost of $302,576. I'm happy to address any comments or questions regarding this.
Can you specify what the parcels are specifically? Are they plots of land? Are they the stations? Are they, what are we looking at, just for, so people can understand?
Well, this building is one of the properties. The major ones would be the Stephanie Tubbs Jones Transit Center, which is within the district.
Of course, yeah.
Various stations, West 3rd, East 9th, and along the waterfront line where we own property. The formula assesses you based on your road frontage. So this data is all available through the county, and they've taken each proposed member in the district has all of their frontage tallied up, and then there's a formula as to how that's applied.
Hi, Trustee Elder here. Just for clarification, we own 17 of how many parcels, do you know?
How many parcels in the district?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have no idea. Oh. Thousands.
So that does it. Thank you.
We can certainly get that information for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Where are we pulling the $300,000 from in the budget? To pay for this?
I think the resolution has this in the programming and planning budget.
Correct. It's in the planning department.
She's pulling up.
Hi, it comes from the Planning and Programming Department as part of our tax and assessment fees that we pay every year, and we've been paying it every year since 2005.
So this is spread over the annual operating budget for those years?
Can you go back to thank you.
Yes. The assessment, as I said, currently we're at $37,000 for our current participation in the DCIC. And then for this term beginning in 2026, our assessment would go to $40,000, 2.35% increase thereafter.
So if I can pop in for a moment, and then Mary Beth stay close. So this is a special improvement district proposal, right? Because it's the proposed amendments, and I think this chart is really important to note because it shows our investment over time. I want to say it's a 7-year outlook, if I'm not mistaken, give or take 7 years. And there is an assessment increase that goes along with the risk, the rate of inflation for services that really support the downtown district. Because RTA is so integral in the downtown health and vitality of just not even mobility, but also the services that our customers enjoy as well. RTA has been a part of DCA. They've been renamed a couple times, Downtown Cleveland. I do sit on the board of that as well for RTA. This is something that has been steeped in our community. It is outside of the purview that I have as a voting member for this. Their petition for this is DCA, as we're a stakeholder. As our stakeholders, there's probably a running list of 50 or 60 members on the low end through downtown Cleveland. This has to do with their ability to have ambassadors, as do we as well. I want to say it's listed in the memo that you would have gotten as well that gives a good synopsis. This is not anything that RTA votes on as a voting member of DCA or DC, Downtown Cleveland. This is to show support of the petition for the increase in fees that would be distributed amongst all stakeholders in the downtown area of which we are a part. Our trolley services also support downtown, albeit we have reduced that service after COVID. Also, a lot of the bus lines, Tower City, which is also included in the downtown central business footprint. So a lot of these services, again, are a shared communal prospect. This is how it's been explained by Downtown Cleveland. And so this comes before the board because I cannot, as a member of RTA, push forward this. It has to have board approval. And that is why it lands in your lap instead of mine as an RTA employee. So I wanted to make sure that we had that on the record as well. That is why it comes in front of the board. I am looking at Janet to make sure that I've explained this correctly. I'm very sensitive about the boards that I sit on, as she well knows, to make sure that this is an item that is up to the board for decision, but I wanted to provide the information and level setting as how we play in the grand scheme of things as a downtown stakeholder. Janet, if I missed anything.
No, you didn't. Thank you. Just wanted to add as well that the funds we pay for to be part of this group do more than just tax us and then that's it. From everything from the flowers that you see that are displayed throughout the district in front of this building, even and along West 6th, West 9th Street, to wayfinding services that ambassadors do. You know, there are times when the ambassadors will be out there and they'll see somebody who's a guest to the city and they're trying to find a way to either get on public transportation or find their way to a particular location. These ambassadors are able to do that. The cleanliness and the safety piece is something that they've done. Many of our people who work in this building use them to escort them to their vehicles at night. That's one of the things that the ambassadors do. You'll see them early in the morning, they're hosing down the sidewalks and streets. They're sweeping up trash in the district. And again, they are additional eyes and ears in the community in this district. And so they do provide to enhance the security for our customers, our employees, and also for the whole downtown area. So it really is a very beneficial service to us. We can provide more information about the other parcels involved and specific information about what properties owned by RTA that are covered. Those are great questions. We'll make sure you have that in in the information, and it will come to you before you have to vote on the resolution. But again, I would say that it is a very beneficial. It's one of those quiet things that happens, and you don't really know how those flowers happen to show up, but they show up because we're paying for them, and others are paying for them to improve and enhance the whole downtown experience for customers, employees, and visitors. Thanks.
I have a brief comment. I'm supportive of this. I'm supportive of downtown Cleveland. One thing that changed recently was that they took over management of Public Square. As soon as they did, signs came out on Public Square saying that there's hours of usage, curfew, whatever. That those do not apply to our bus shelters. It's clarified. But one thing I want us to be careful about, or want them to be careful about in doing the safety, the execution of their safety management down on Public Square, is that people walking to and from those shelters are also not bothered, stopped, otherwise harassed just because they're walking through Public Square, even though it's, after hours or whatever. If they're going to our facilities, I want them to be able to not be too bothered by that. I think that's a kind of yellow flag. It's not a red flag. It's just something that they should be aware of, that our facilities are exempted. I get that, but people are going to walk through Public Square to get to our facilities, and I want them to be able to do so without having too much trouble.
Anyone else? You would like a motion on this, correct? Move it to the full board. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll move that forward. Next, we have persistent poverty, and Mary Beth, I think you're going to stay at the podium.
I know, I'll just stay here. Good morning, Chairman Komar, Vice Chairman Welsh, and the members of the board. I'm Mary Beth Faith, Director of Planning and the Project Manager for this study. It's fitting that we provide an update to the board on the Transit Access Barrier Study on this day, Transit Equity Day, Rosa Parks' birthday, because we're celebrating the role of public transit and its historic role in serving the diverse population of our area and across the nation. GCRTA's service area ranks in the top of the nation, exhibiting high and persistent factors of economic distress. Transportation, as you know, is a key factor in both the social determinants of health and the social determinants of work, and immensely important to people getting around. With these factors in mind, GCRTA applied for and received a grant from FTA to explore these issues. The purpose of the Transit Access Barrier Study is to identify where in the county this population resides, who they are, their age, their demographics, and how GCRTA can bridge these barriers. To this end, the board in 2024 awarded a contract to HDR Incorporated to complete the Transit Access Barrier Study, now branded as Bridging Possibilities, and asked us, more importantly, to come back to you to get updated as the study proceeds and to get your feedback. Today is the day. We have no action that we need from the board, but we're ready. We've finished our existing conditions report, and we have completed a robust round of public engagement. So with that, I'm going to introduce our HDR team: Josh Sikich, project principal from HDR; Amy Yost, who used to work here, by the way; the project manager, Sabrina Colon, manager of engagement at HDR, and not of HDR, but Dr. Rob Fisher of CSU, of Case Western, I'm sorry, who will provide a brief update. I went to both of them, so it doesn't matter. So, Josh.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Good morning, everyone. So the point of this study is to really identify those potential barriers to public transit and provide recommendations to reduce or eliminate those barriers to RTA services and facilities. Our goals are really to prepare a data-driven and community-centered plan. And I think that community-centered is going to come across throughout the presentation. Creating opportunities for meaningful engagement, and that takes the form of focus groups that we'll talk about in a little bit, and then providing a deeper understanding at the intersection of poverty and transit access. We are in the preliminary stages of this study, so all this information is preliminary. We're at a moment in time, but it really starts with stakeholder outreach. We had a great stakeholder meeting in August. We also had focus groups in the fall. We've been working on existing conditions, looking at both transit services, where are people coming and going, how are they transferring, how are they using the service, as well as situations of poverty and communities of low income, and trying to bridge those multiple topics. We're about to approach the opportunity to identify potential transit barriers and then ultimately recommend solutions to those, come up with recommendations with an action plan of costs, roles and responsibilities, years that those action plans are going to be implemented. So that'll be the outcome as we get into later in the summer. Our schedule ultimately does include a variety of focus groups that we'll talk to you about today, as well as additional engagement in the spring to bring these ideas across the community. And also, looking at the entire county, the entire service area of RTA, and trying to come up with opportunities to solve problems and improve people's lives. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
Good morning. So just to share a little bit about, since the focus of this is on communities of persistent poverty, I want to give you a little framing for poverty as a generic concern. This graph just simply shows comparing Ohio to national data. I think what's interesting here is I always want to point out, the scale tells you this doesn't start at zero, right? So we do see a decline during this period and some bumping around 13%. If we took this graph back to 1970, it would be an almost indiscernible difference over time. We've been bumping around between 12 and 15% nationally and in Ohio during that time. So I don't want anybody to think, this is a really impressive trend, because we've been at this a very long time, since the war on poverty, and really only in those years after the implementation of those national programs in the late 1960s did we see a significant decrease in poverty. However, if you look at these lines, you'll see no dip around the COVID-19 era, and that says something to us about how we measure poverty officially in the United States. This is the official poverty statistics. There's a competing measure called the supplemental measure of poverty, which takes into account cash transfers from the government. And if you saw that graphic, you would see a major dip during the pandemic, which reflected those dramatic transfers that families received, dependent care credits and the checks that many received. So with its limitations, this gives us a sense of how we're doing on economic, at least income-based understanding of poverty, but it is one dimension. So as far as the definition, I want us to be clear that persistent poverty has an entire literature out there, many ways of measuring it. We are, in a way, wedded to the definition that was part of this award from the federal government, which was that an area has 20% or higher poverty rate on the official measure for 3 consecutive time points. And for this work we've done, we focused on 2000, the roughly 2010 and 2020. We are not using decennial census data in those latter two, because the data in the decennial census is not as detailed as what we receive from what is called the American Community Survey, which is basically a rolling replacement for data that had only been available in the decennial census. On the left-hand side, you'll see a map of Cleveland is the large part, and then the county is the inset. The bottom line is that roughly 80% of our census tracts in the city of Cleveland meet this definition of persistent poverty. Outside the city of Cleveland, in the county proper, you'll see areas like Lawrenceville Heights and Highland Heights, Lindale and parts of Brook Park on the west. But pretty much the dominant demonstration of this persistent poverty measure is within the city, almost the entire east side. And certainly city of East Cleveland is there as well. I will say that so part of this was what areas are we talking about as we look at transit needs. This is the map that drives that examination, but it's also who lives here and what are the conditions that they experience. So part of our analysis was to compare households that live in areas of persistent poverty to households that do not, but still adjacent to those areas, to look at social concerns, household differences, work attachment, a whole variety of things. So I'm not able to go into all that today, but those are data that are also being fed into the process that Josh described. Now we're going to talk about transit. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Amy Yost as part of the HDR team, and we're really excited to work with Rob and Case Western to kind of know that narrative, the history, the historical context of how these neighborhoods came to be and apply it to our transportation, our transit knowledge that we have. So with the areas of persistent poverty identified, we looked at something called transit need and transit propensity. So really looking at county-wide, multiple different data points, not just poverty, that might drive people to use public transit and transit services. So this map here on the left identifies census tract level of the lowest need up to the highest need based on a variety of data points, including the low-income populations, but also households with zero vehicles available to them, people with disabilities, and populations over the age of 65, and youth populations under 18 years old, as those are general demographics that tend to use public transit at a higher rate. I think it's important as we continue to develop solutions and identify barriers to continue to look at our transit network that we have at Greater Cleveland RTA. So there are multiple different transit types, as we've heard throughout this board meeting, even today. But calling into mind the ridership, this is 2024 ridership data from last year, excluding paratransit services. The fixed route bus service is really the core of the transit network, and it's even shown here in the total ridership of over 75%, including, that doesn't even include the health line, which is almost 9%. Those are the bus lines that really, they provide transit, they provide access to those areas that we saw both in just areas of persistent poverty, but also in that transit need category. So understanding that the fixed system, the fixed bus routes, also the red line, of course, also all these lines and transit types go through areas that need transit, but really realizing the fixed bus service and what it creates and provides to the members of our public. As part of this process, last November, we did a pretty large lift of trying to talk to residents. We worked with our community-based organizations through our networks, and we created focus groups. We really wanted these focus groups to be intentional. We tried to limit participation. You can see, though, sometimes people got really excited, and we had 31 people at Midtown, for example. But we tried to keep them intimate so we could discuss their daily lives. Not just, how do you get to the bus, but why do you use the bus? Why don't you use the bus? So it was a really great conversation that we had in November. We were able to connect with over 240 people. We were able to present to the the Cuyahoga Housing Authority, the Progressive Action Council. We were also able to meet with the Community Advisory Council here at RTA in November, just to show them our progress and receive feedback to make sure we're really reaching individuals that need these transit services. As part of these focus groups, we kind of ask some just general questions to make sure we are doing our due diligence of who we are reaching and who are we talking to. So this is just kind of a geographic map based on where participants said they live by zip code. So the darker the blue, the more participants. Also kind of showing where we had those focus group locations. We met them where they're at the community organization that they might be getting services from, or where they feel comfortable going to in their community and their neighborhood. So I'm going to turn it over to Sabrina here.
Good morning. My name is Sabrina Colon with HDR. I'm a strategic communications lead, and I served as the primary facilitator for the focus groups that we had. And so I do want to say we did work on making sure that the folks that were entering the room were representative of the communities that we wanted to speak to. But once they got into the room, the conversations was just about their experience. And so there wasn't a high focus on, why are you in the situation you're currently in? It was just about what is your experience riding transit now? And I think that's just a very important note to make. And so I just want to go through some of the things that we heard thus far. So I'm going to start with some of the things that I think were on the kind of positive end of their experience with RTA, some of the focus group findings. We asked very, specifically how they felt about the fare structure, and most folks did say that was a pretty fair for the services they received. We also asked about, where is the current system getting them where they want to go? And from a geographic standpoint of the whole system, most individuals were saying that they were able to get where they wanted to go throughout the system. Geographically, they could get to where they needed. And then there was also, I think, an appreciation for operators for all their responsibilities. You'll see in just a moment, talking a little bit more about some of the customer service with that, but just a recognition about how much the operators might have to contend with over the course of their day as well. And so there was an appreciation that was highlighted. But again, we were asking about their barriers, and so we did really press in to talk about what are the barriers that you're having. And so just some of the focus group findings, overall, they really fit into these categories. One being safety, and really safety and security. There was a lot of conversation in I think almost every focus group that we had around, their safety at stops. Conversations around lighting, whether or not there were other measures that RTA or other partners could take to just ensure that they felt safer as they waited as well as got onto the vehicles. Again, the operator customer service, and that was a lot about consistency of the customer services received, whether or not someone needed assistance, understanding where they were going or what their ticket got them, just whether or not they felt they got good or bad customer service in that experience. And so we did see that across the gamut. Cleanliness and the cleanliness they did talk a little bit about on the vehicles themselves, but a lot of that was down to the stops themselves. So cleanliness came up pretty consistently in most of our conversations. And then service availability, and that's a combination. So I did say, from a geographic standpoint, they felt they could get where they needed to go, but service availability was kind of encompassing of whether or not stops were located close enough together and they felt they could get easily to a location, whether or not they felt like times of day were consistent, if they were getting off late at night and needed to get back home. And so service availability came up consistently. And then the transfers. And so this is a combination of conversations of individuals actually understanding what the current transfer policy is, and so whether or not that was consistent or they were getting the same information from the operator when they were asking what their ticket got them, in addition to some questions about changes or possible changes to that would better work with their lifestyle and how they needed to use the full system and whether or not the transfer policy really matched what they needed. And then strollers also came up. We did have a couple focus groups that were really targeted at groups that catered to parents. And so we know there's safety concerns around how what you can use with your strollers on the vehicles, but there was concerns around the safety of having, whether you have to take your child out and whether they wanted to, and decisions they would make about what they would ride if that was something they had to do. And so again, this is, there was a lot of conversations around all of these categories, but I think these are kind of the main ones that everything kind of fell underneath. And we'll continue to kind of dig deeper as we go into the next round of engagement, as we talk through what are some of the potential solutions tied to the findings that we had. Next.
Thank you, Sabrina. So, we're at a moment in time, all these findings are preliminary. Our next steps are to really take these various inputs, the inputs from the focus groups, the inputs from the transit analysis, the inputs from the analysis of populations with low incomes, our analysis from our stakeholder meetings, and put that all together, and then really try to identify those barriers, explore those that maybe there's opportunities for improvement, and then ultimately, as we get into the spring, more public engagement, and then, as I mentioned, when we get into the summer, actual recommendations. And with these types of plans, we have a matrix of, the organization that's responsible, because a lot of these will be shared responsibilities. It won't just be RTA, but really clearly identifying what's RTA's role versus other stakeholders and other partners as well, what the funding mechanisms are, and what the outcomes are that are expected. So with that, any questions?
Any questions or comments? We really would like to hear your feedback and any suggestions you have for the team as we proceed forward. We do plan to complete the study and come back to you in the fall, and the study will be completed by the end of the year. So
Really, thank you for the presentation, and I like on some of those latter slides some of the specifics. I know that I've received comments on strollers and what's the consistent policy of RTA? How can we provide safety for the infants or children? And working through some of that, I think some really good discussion points will come out of this. Any other comments?
I thought it was a great presentation. Just curious, how did we go about, and forgive me if you covered this, how did we go about determining which organizations that we would work with to pull into the focus groups?
Hi, yes. So our focus groups were really, they were strategic in that we targeted organizations in which we had prior partnerships with, but we also came together with multiple departments here within RTA. We do have a stakeholder group that we also asked them if they would be willing and interested. So we had, I think, 11 focus groups locations. I know the Cleveland Food Bank hosted at least 3 focus groups, but really we contacted over 35 organizations. Out of that, about 20 of them got back to us, and we had some conversation and coordination. Out of those 20 conversations, we were able to book and schedule 11 of them, just based on what's available and opportunities.
And we worked really closely with Dr. Natoya Walker-Minor from External Affairs to help us. She has a lot of history, I'm sure she'll talk about, with the groups, and really provided valuable resources to us. So United Way, I don't know, Dr. Natoya, if you want to add.
Sure. Good morning. I would just, to answer the question, we work with organizations that we know in the community serve low-income, moderate-income populations. As Amy indicated, we reached out to about 35 of them. A lot of them I have worked with over the course of my career here in Cleveland, so I made personal phone calls to each of these organizations, and the 11 that responded, we know serve deep poverty in and around the community. For example, the food bank, who, as you know, for 3 years, post-COVID and during COVID, served all those people off South Marginal. CMHA, which serves about 18,000 families in and around the community, and then the other organizations. So we wanted to have a broad and deep reach into this. I myself and members of my team attended these sessions along with the consulting team so that RTA would be present, but more than that, just to be in the room so that we can listen as well. And then for me, because I worked at CMHA and a lot of these other organizations throughout the course of my career, to be present, for example, with the resident leadership, because I know them and have a 30-year history with them.
That's helpful, thank you. And I'm also curious just about the demographics, any data that we would have collected on who participated. I understand that they fall into a certain percentage of poverty level, according to what, federal guidelines are, but I'm interested in, a little bit deeper into who the people are that sat in these rooms and provided their feedback.
Yeah, we can provide that information. We did offer a general questionnaire.
Mm-hmm.
We did not require anyone to fill it out, of
Sure.
course. So we can give you some data points of that information.
Thank you.
I have a few quick questions, I guess, following on that thread. Whether or not the respondees correspond accurately to the overall data, that is to say, if they're representative of of the area in terms of who the population that we're looking at, whether or not the people that we talk to match up well, and if not, and if not, we can look at the weighting of it or something like that. That would be interesting data to see. Can we go back to the was it on the map? Was there?
Yeah, there's a few maps, but we'll start from.
There was one that I think had the places. Yeah.
This one. So yeah, this is based on the zip codes of part of the questionnaire with more data on who these individuals are. But this was the one that we decided to show today of the location of where they reside.
And were any of these, or is any other outreach done either in Spanish language, or if it's applicable in Asia Town, maybe Chinese or Vietnamese or something?
We reached out to those organizations, those ones in particular. We were not successful in creating a focus group this fall, but we do have additional outreach that we're going to do this spring that could include those communities.
Okay.
They are represented on our stakeholders meeting. We met earlier this year, and we're meeting today.
We do have a larger stakeholder meeting group, which those organizational leads are a part of.
And then
and I'll just add, the stakeholder meeting involves some of the members for the organizations that we went out to. And we had maybe 2 of those before we even went out for the focus groups here in this room so that we could have their voice and engagement as we structure those things.
Yeah.
And then just a statistical curiosity, Dr. Fisher, I'm glad you mentioned the supplemental measure because that was one of my questions, but then I'm just sheerly curious if the supplemental measure, I can look it up, I guess, if you don't know offhand, does that stay pretty similar over the last 50 years as well, just like the...
It actually doesn't. It only started in, I don't know, maybe in the late 90s, so it doesn't go back all that time, but it has been pretty consistent, showing lower poverty around this. You'll see some of the same bumps with the official, but it is consistently flat over the period.
Thanks.
I was just going to add, I thank you as always for this educational session and the work that you're doing to inform us and inform the community about what's happening in our own communities. And I think that it shows some consistency around RTA's efforts to really listen to the needs of the community, that compared to combination with TransPro and Traction. I think that that's very helpful. People are always saying to us, like, y'all are not coming to us and listening to us. And I think that this shows that we are in various ways and in various studies. And I know that this has been helpful for me in how we are making decisions individually and collectively to really move the needle as far as access for transit. So we couldn't have done that without you, and I just want to thank you for that.
I have an additional question. I think it was regarding the transit network slide. I think there was mention that did not include paratransit. Why is that? And did we capture those communities of transit riders perhaps in the focus groups? And I'm sure that might come out with some of the data that you're going to provide, but.
Yes, so paratransit is included in our transit access barrier study. We did meet with several focus groups that have paratransit individuals, so it is one of our identified findings for service availability and accessibility. In terms of this slide where it did not include paratransit ridership data, we did not include it in the slide, but we definitely have ridership data for paratransit services. But in the whole, like in the report and in the existing conditions, we are going to reference paratransit, but just looking at the key network here for fixed route is the intention.
So if I may, so I would suggest if you could update this slide to include paratransit. And Amy, I appreciate you saying that. You saw me boring a hole into your head there, staring at you. We had an extensive conversation about paratransit in our debrief yesterday prior to this meeting. So there's a lot of encouraging feedback I think that we can utilize to make sure that the access and the experience of the customer is definitely reflected. So it is part of the review that this team is going through. So I would just suggest to update the slide to make sure that it's on record as well.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I just had a general comment and then a few specific questions. My general comment is thank you. This was an excellent presentation, and then just the work itself is really important for RTA and the community. So I was curious about two things. One, are you getting any information in your focus groups or otherwise about any changes in demand for public transit, just creating more context around how trends might be changing and how users use public transit or what they're using it for? I was interested in that. And then the second thing is just trying to understand this propensity measure and how we're capturing the perspectives of people who are not currently riding. Maybe they were past riders, they don't ride anymore, or maybe they're potential riders. We just have to make some adjustments. I would just love to understand more about how you're capturing their perspectives or if they're also part of these focus groups.
I'm going to answer the first one, and then Amy's going to answer the second one, Amy and Sabrina. The first one is, we didn't go after that in this study. We got a lot of information. Oh, I used to ride, but I don't ride anymore, and this is why. Our onboard, as well as this, our customer service community value survey, do track that. What we're finding, there's a lot more people that are going for leisure, for certain, and there are a lot more, and our peak periods have been expanding for the last several years, maybe decades. So that's what we're finding so far. And we're really diving in to our ridership, our community evaluation survey, as well as our onboard survey, which you'll see soon. And then I'll let Amy talk, or Amy or Sabrina talk.
Just going to add. So hopefully I'm answering your question fully. So in terms of the conversations that we had, I mean, it really was about their current experience. Obviously, there were some, stories they're telling about, previously and how they rode, but it really was like how was your experience today? And that was how we mostly guided the conversation. We did have some conversations specifically with folks that do not currently ride transit, but did in the past. And so a lot of the questions in those conversations were more about why do you no longer ride transit? Or if you had someone that was visiting you from out of the city, would you suggest for them to ride transit? And so that was always really a key question that we asked, even those that do ride now, if they would suggest for others. And so we do have that captured as well in our notes, having them understand what is the reason why they wouldn't. Oftentimes it came down to they now have a vehicle, and so that was kind of that was that point in time, they've got this vehicle now, and whether or not that convenience was worth going back onto transit, and then what would encourage you to then maybe have your vehicle to the side and then use it for certain things. And so we do have some of that documented in the conversation, and we did have one focus group where almost the entire group was non-current riders, and then we had individuals in the other groups that didn't currently ride, and we had them kind of pull out their experiences as well. So yeah, we do have some of that.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you again for the presentation. Is there anybody else? Oh.
Just real quickly, no, not a question, just again, a thank you for the great work you're doing. I think we all understand that poverty is an intractable problem, and even of late, we've read in the paper about what are people really doing about it. We talk a lot about it, but what do we do? And so the recommendations, I think, will be all very interested in the recommendations coming out of this group. So thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have a presentation on fare capping, and I think we have Josh Miranda here to present, Director of MIS.
If I may, before Josh gets going here,
Sure.
Just wanted to make a hybrid comment for time. Just wanted to thank the team from HDR again. Thank you for making that great presentation. I will say that during the debrief, we will save you the belabored conversation that we had, but there was a lot of conversations about what can we do? What are the solutions that come out of that information? And part of that is accessibility and equity. It's a perfect segue into what Josh is going to be able to tee up for you today. This is informational only. I want to make sure that we mention that. but we have a couple projects that are layered. You will see the cascading effects on our community as well as us as internal staff to be able to layer in technology, equity. It is Transit Equity Day, so I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that and how fortuitous it is that it falls on this day. It is very important that we get this ball rolling, so to speak, because it's going to come hard and come fast. We've been working on this for quite a while, but there are a lot of layers of approvals and concurrence that we want to make sure that you understand the project that we're going to be laying out in front of you. I will say this, it is not new technology, as Josh smiles, but we are catching up. This is something that has been available for quite some time in the transit industry. This is another opportunity for Cleveland to be able to level up, so to speak, if I could be anecdotal, and to say, let's hurry up and get ahead of the curve so that we can take advantage of newer technologies. This is a prime reason for the division, and I mean that in a cohesive way, of IT. So I'm looking at Charles as our newest member of the leadership team, as I call it, on the hardware side, and Josh is the leader for the software side. That is my explanation, not theirs, but this should be a great explanation of one hand feeding to the other. So Josh.
Good morning, Committee Chair Kumar and members of the committee. My name is Joshua Miranda. I am the Director of Management Information Services, and this morning we're going to talk about fare modernization and enabling fare capping. So we're going to talk about some components here. Implementing account-based ticketing has been achieved. Enabling fare capping requires board approval, which is why we're discussing this today. Updated fare media includes smart cards, which is currently being developed with Masabi and GCRTA. Ticket vending machines, a consultant was approved in September of 2024. So we're working on the RFP document to replace those units. And then the retail sales network, which consists of existing sales agents and the Vanilla Direct network. So this is a representation of the Vanilla Direct network. So these are locations where individuals will be able to add value or top up their accounts with cash, so they don't have to go to just our customer service locations. They can go to any of these locations. This is searchable by their address, and each of the blue points on the screen shows a concentration of providers in that area. And then you can drill down into those locations and find a place that's convenient for you to add value to the carts. So account-based ticketing relies on back office accounts linked to a ticket or a token. Customers tap or scan that token, and fares are calculated based on usage. Fare capping is an optional feature enabled by ABT. Fare capping requires accounts linking fare payment to customers. Accounts can have discounts for seniors, students, etc., and tokens include smart cards and mobile devices. So this is a slide from our strategic plan initiative in the bottom right-hand corner. It says fare capping and open payments. So we're talking about fare capping, and later in this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about open payments. So why fare capping? It enables more customers to benefit from the unlimited use pricing on all-day, 7-day, or monthly pass. It's part of the strategic plan that we talked about on the previous slide. Customers don't need to know in advance how much they will ride in the current day, week, or month. There's no need to pay up front for a whole day, week, or month. It improves affordability and equity for low-income customers, and it requires smart card or opting in on the mobile app. And fare capping is only available to individuals. So here's a slide that we put together to try to help explain what fare capping actually is. So each of the piggy banks represents an all-day pass in this model for a full fare rate. So if you were to use the transit service 5 days in a row, you would reach a fare capping threshold. So on the 6th day, instead of paying for your fare, we're going to give that to you for free. On the 7th day, we're going to continue in that series and give that to you for free. So your total exposure to ride for that full 7 days will cap out at $25. We slide down to a rolling 7-day, and so that if you did 3 consecutive 7 days, on the 4th consecutive 7th day, instead of charging you $25, we're going to give you that discount there and cap you at $20, making sure that you paid the total of what would have been a monthly pass in this equation, which is $95. And then we presented that also for the senior disabled, just to give you a feel. It would be the same structure, $250, $250, $250, $250, 2 free days, day 6 and day 7. That gets you to a capped rate of $12.50. Again, 3 full $12.50 rates, and then the fourth one we would cap you at $10.50 to get you to a total monthly cost of $48. And then we put together just a quick chart for you for the other specific fields that we thought would be of interest. And then we're going to switch gears a little bit into what is open payments. So I'll call your attention to the icon on the top of the screen. That icon is the universal symbol that's on most devices. You've seen it at grocery stores and other locations. That means that the technology is able to take open payments. So open payments allows secure transactions utilizing your own device or item. Customer taps or scans the token, and fares are calculated based on usage, commonly used by tourists and infrequent transit users. The advantages is it's the same cost model as the current offering, and it leverages existing hardware. So the hardware that's been deployed already has this capability. It's something that we need to turn on from a feature standpoint. Limitations, there is no fare capping, and this option cannot use discount, senior, or student. So you're going to come in, and you're going to be a full fare paying individual, be the equivalent of cash. And so we're going to talk about all these components that we've been walking through. So review fare equity study happened in 2019. It was part of the efforts and strategic plan to talk about what do we want to do. Title VI fare equity study was performed. And so now we're talking about the last piece, which is revising codebook. And that's why we're getting you all up to speed, make sure you understand what the changes are that are required. So 2019 Fare Equity Study recommended implementation of account-based ticketing and fare capping, a thorough analysis of transit user surveys. Many riders pay extra by not using 7-day and monthly passes. Fare capping equity for riders who can't afford a monthly pass by offering an installment plan, pay one fare at a time until a monthly pass has been paid for. And we demonstrated that on the earlier slides, how that would function. 2019 Fare Equity Study continued. A follow-up survey found that riders that did not use monthly passes because 31% cannot afford a monthly pass and 26% cannot predict what their transit usage will be. They did not use a 7-day pass because 31% cannot predict their transit usage, 25% used a monthly pass, and 5% can't afford a 7-day. And then we also highlighted that flexible work schedules in 2025 increase this benefit potentially to the riders. In 2024, Title VI Fare Equity Analysis was completed. So GCRTA Service Management Department performed the analysis for the proposed fare structure revision. The findings were that the fare structure revision was consistent with the requirements of Title VI, no disparate impact on minority customers, and no disproportionate burden on low-income customers. The proposed codebook revisions will require changes to Chapter 840, Commissions and Fare Structure. And the areas inside that would be impacted would be eliminating the park and ride and out-of-county fares, add rates for fare capping, eliminate sections regarding fares for rides out of county, and edits for consistency and clarity. And with that, I would take any questions.
Not a question, but a comment. Thanks. I've been looking forward to this, and as far as I'm concerned, there is no too soon. So with the caveat of making sure we're thorough and complete, as quickly as we can get this implemented, the better. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, please.
Yeah, just a comment, thank you. And I am just as like an observer who isn't, in the weeds on fare systems, this seems like a very smart way to go. I will just I guess, encourage us to think about really clear communication strategies so as not to introduce confusion or nervousness with riders who have been using, our system for a very long time. So that's my only encouragement.
Very good. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you again. Nice overview.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have an executive session that has been requested. I'd like to make a motion to enable the board to conference with GCRTA attorneys for information gathering, fact-finding, and to receive legal advice. Is there a second to that motion?
Second that motion to consider the appointment, employee dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of a public employee or official.
All right.
We're up.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, wait.
Let me go back
Here,
and do
put
that
that one.
motion again.
Different,
Yeah, thank you. I second that motion to enable the board to conference with the GCRTA attorneys for information gathering, fact-finding, and receive legal advice.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Kumar?
Yes.
Ms. Welch?
Yes.
Ms. Elder?
Yes.
Ms. McPherson?
Yes.
Ms. Pachetti?
Yes.
Mr. Sleesman?
Yes.
And Mayor Weiss?
Yes.
You have 7 ayes and none opposed.
If I may,
All right, Sheila, I think we're back on. Thank you.
Okay, so I move to come out of executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in
Pearson.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Call the roll.
Oh, call the roll? Okay, thank you,
And
Teresa.
who did the second? I didn't hear.
I did. I'd second.
Deidre?
Seconded.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Mayor Kumar, you had to leave. Ms. Welch,
Yes, present.
Ms. Elder,
Yes. Yes.
Ms. McPherson,
Yes.
Ms. Pachetti,
Yes.
Mr. Sleesman,
Yes.
and Mayor Weiss.
Yes.
Okay, you had 6 ayes and none opposed.
Thank you.
You have to adjourn.
And now I'll motion to adjourn the committee meeting. The committee of the whole, yes, for February 4th. Do I have a
Elder, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting has been adjourned. And now we move into,
We'll now call to order.
oh, right, yeah. The ad hoc committee meeting.
Yeah, no, you guys.
Okay,
you guys
bye.
did.
Needed to do one more thing and that.
Oh, the
committee of
motions.
whole. Yeah,
So,
I forgot that quick.
The what?
The motions, we have to approve.
You got 6?
Uh-huh, yeah. Oh, not now.
Oh, for the COC?
Mm-hmm. Man, I mean, you know, Robert's rules. But are we not doing that pulling it to the full board? Can we not do it in the full board meeting? Yeah. Oh, to send it to the full board. I see. Okay.
He couldn't have gotten out that fast. Okay.
2 feet. Okay.
So close.
And I don't think we need a roll call for this, right? Just motion second. We don't need a roll call.
But I have to do them both individually.
I'd recommend that, yes.
Okay. I would like, roll call, Teresa.
Okay, we have to state what what are we calling the roll for?
You need a roll call to move these lists full board, unless there's somebody who needs to abstain. I don't think there is. You did a roll call to come out of executive session? No, you're good.
Yeah, but we adjourned the meeting also.
Oh, you adjourned the...
Committee meeting. So then we have to go back into the...
Yeah, it won't take long.
Okay, so I'm going to call to order the committee of the whole meeting. Teresa, roll call.
No, I think go ahead. I won't-
Don't want to complicate
Ms.
it.
Welch.
Yes.
Ms. Elder.
Yes.
Ms. McPherson.
Yes.
Pachetti, Sleesman, and Weiss.
Yes.
Okay, 6, that's 6.
Okay, and so now I'm going to motion to move
Full board.
to the full board the reappointment of Mr. Walton, Mrs. Walton, and Mr. Morris.
Okay, it was moved by Welch.
Second.
Okay, by Weiss.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries on to the full board. Now I motion to adjourn.
Do you have to approve to do the same thing with the minutes, the code? Do we have to?
Do we have to?
The
The
code.
changes to the code, do we need to send that on to the full board too?
Okay. So then,
Okay, so one more vote.
okay, so we motion, thank you, Wise, for keeping us on track. Motion to send the amended changes for the COC committee to the full board.
So moved, or second.
Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Now I motion to adjourn the committee of the whole.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is now adjourned. The committee of the whole is now adjourned. Now we will adjourn, or we will, now you can go,
Now you
Deidre.
can really go. We promised, Deidre. So.
We will begin that. Oh, right, because you're chair. Yes, I don't have to do this.
Yeah, you don't have to do this.
Oh, my God, yes.
But you can stand.
Okay.
So I'm calling to order the ad hoc, meeting of the Ad hoc Compensation Committee. Teresa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Wise?
Yes,
Ms.
here.
Welch?
Yes.
Ms. Elder?
Here.
And Ms. Pachetti? Here. You have 4 committee members present. You have a quorum.
Okay, so yeah, George is here.
So we need a motion and a second to go to executive
Executive session.
session, and the
I move we go into executive
description has to
session.
be,
Second, Welch.
okay, and I need to do a roll call.
Yep.
Okay, Mayor Weiss?
Yes.
Ms. Welch?
Yes.
Ms. Elder?
Yes.
And Ms. Machetti?
Yes.
You have 4 ayes and none opposed. So you guys gonna go in there, or you gonna stay in here?
I think we're going to stay in here.
Okay. Okay.
Second, Welch.
Okay. All right, Mayor Weiss? Ms. Welch?
Yes.
Ms. Elder?
Yes.
Ms. Pachetti?
Yes.
You have 4 ayes and none opposed.
Second, Welch.
Aye.
All right, we'll finish Sheila.